present the EMODnet Central Portal, how federated web services led to a centralization success stories.
Conor, you have the keynote, so you have 20 minutes and 5 minutes for discussion. So that's good?
24 minutes.
Look on the wall, okay?
Okay. Do I have to run it from here? Yeah. The presentation, yeah.
You have to set it up and then they take over.
Okay. Yes. Yep. And is it just by the keyboard? Okay. Hi, I'm Conor Delaney. I'm from the EMODnet Secretariat, and I'm a very proud member of the Central Portal technical team. A bunch of awesome people a lot of them are here today, and we're taking the opportunity to reveal at our show at this meeting some of the decisions that were made during the massive work of centralization of EMODnet. Because we realized over the course of the centralization process, it might have been obscure to some people just why some decisions were made. And we thought that by giving these slides, you could have a better understanding. And also wanted to show how the centralization of EMODnet was very much built on the groundwork or the foundations that the EMODnet community had done previously with the development of web services and metadata standards, which allowed us to build a centralized EMODnet. So, okay, next slide. So EMODnet vision goes way back to 2008. Just in case, for those of you who don't know, it's a long-term project from the European Commission. Aimed at gathering data, marine and ocean data, oceanographic data, and publishing it as data products for Europe. Prior to 2023, there existed 7 separate thematic portals. One data ingestion portal and 1 central portal. So that's 9 separate portals. And each of the portals looked different. You interacted with them differently. And you're all doing a great job. There's no criticism of the work they were doing. But as a user, you had to change how you interacted with the portals as you went from one to the other. And the Commission really wanted this to change. They wanted to have a more consistent interface for users because they realized that there was a risk of people not being able to access the amazing products that people in EMODnet are producing, and that the goal of EMODnet is the products that EMODnet produces. Just to give you the overall idea, EMODnet produces products from the seabed all the way up to the top of the water column, including human activities and natural activities from the environment, marine environment, and it's across many different thematics. And I was just discussing just beforehand with Mick Galuli from the Marine Institute. We were just talking about metadata and one of the great challenges of metadata. And the thing about EMODnet is metadata is very much on our minds all the time. And one of the reasons for that is because we're across 7 different thematics. So you're talking about metadata from human activities, for example, and then metadata from physics or metadata from bathymetry. All are coming from different areas and are thinking about different ways about how data is represented. And there was general tenets for the EMODnet community from the very beginning was that it would provide services to discover, visualize, and access open and free data and data products. Use Inspire standards, use FAIR data principles, create aggregated and harmonized data products, searchable metadata, and it'd be multidisciplinary, as I mentioned. But now, if we go back to this first tenet, the service to discover, visualize, and access open and free data, that's not longer the case. The tenet now is that we are service to discover, visualize, and download open data from the central portal. And I'll come back to that shortly. So in 2020, DG Mare approached the EMODnet Central Portal team and the Secretariat and our colleagues in Liz and said that the EMODnet Central Portal, which had existed as its own domain and its own website, needs to be ported to the DG Mare, to the Europa domain, which is called repatriation. And this was a rule that came from DG Com. And DG Com had decided that projects, websites such as EMODnet needed to be brought on board to the European Commission domain. So we started that project, and that has lots of knock-ons, which I'll come to in a moment. And we moved EMODnet Central Portal onto the Europa domain. So if you go there now, it's the one Central Portal is on the Europa domain. But that meant that we had to follow the European style guides, European Commission style guides, the corporate look, colours, the information architecture. And you see that when you go now, if you remember the old EMODnet portals, they had a lot of orange in them. We have very little orange in them now because that's not one of the colours in the style guide. We have to follow web accessibility rules. And we have to follow rules on information architecture. For example, we're only allowed to have one map viewer, and we're only allowed to have one catalogue. And we're only allowed to have a limited amount of menus on the menu bar. And these are all things that we have to take into consideration when working on the central portal. So when we started working at centralizing EMODnet, the challenge was that we had to move the 7 separate portals into one portal that captured the essence of the products of EMODnet and it made it easier for users to access the products of EMODnet. We also had to get rid of had to create one central catalog, and we also had to get one map viewer. Now, for the map viewer, we were very lucky that Bathymetry decided to offer their code from their map viewer, and we took their code as a base, and we started working with that. And then we realized that we couldn't start from scratch with everything in EMODnet because we just were too small a team. We had to rely on the web services functionality of all the other portals. And the idea being that they would continue to publish their data services, but at the end of the project, they would switch off their portals and map viewers. So that's what we did. And this is as technical as we get on this. I'm sorry for not being too technical, but the overview here is what exists in concept for EMODnet. On the far, each EMODnet lot has a geodatabase, or maybe it would have a thread server or an AirDAP server, or it has a catalog. We have a GeoNetwork catalog here, but it's not necessarily always a GeoNetwork catalog. The EMODnet portal aggregates all these. In some cases, we copy the data from the thematic lot to a central server in Flanders Marine Institute, and we do that for performance reasons. And then we use the central map viewer and the central catalog to give the impression that it is a centralized service. But really, it's still a federated system in the background where the thematic lots are publishing their services and data products through their data infrastructures. So for us, the geo servers need to produce web mapping services, web feature services, web coverage services, and also there's tile services there. Bathymetry produced those. And as long as they were all in OGC compliant, then we could use them. So with the GeoNetwork also publishes an OGC catalog, and we use that to accumulate or to aggregate the catalogs so that we produce one central catalog at on the EMODnet website. We also brought in a new technology called AirDAP, and the reason we brought in that technology is to allow for the subsetting of gridded data, and that is a requirement that came in from the Commission, and I will show you in a moment on that. So it was important that the user has a common experience across thematics when they come to the EMODnet portal. So here we have an example of the biology data, and biology publishes some of the data in web feature services, and the Commission were adamant that you needed to be able to draw a box on the map viewer and subset the data below that box. And that was reasonably straightforward with the biology because we were using it through web feature services, and that's a thing you can do with OGC web feature services. That was implemented, but you also have to do that with other thematics. So for bathymetry, we're not using web feature services. We're using the data, bathymetry DTMs are in netCDF format. In that case, we unified the DTMs into one single DTM, which we put on an AirDAP server in order to provide the functionality to the user that when they draw a box, they can get the data within the box that's on the map viewer. And this has to go across all the layers. So all the layers that you open up, you have to be able to draw a box and get a subset across the data products across those layers. So the demands from the Commission, what they wanted users to be able to do was dictating what we needed to do in terms of what the tools we were using. We had to use the tools that are available to our community. Just because we couldn't go and reinvent the wheel, we don't have the time or the energies to do that. So in the case of the AirDAP system, AirDAP is developed by NOAA, so it's very much based on ocean data sharing principles, so that was an easy reach for us. And I noticed there's a lot of people using it these days. I'm not going to talk about the positive, the negatives or the positives of it. It was just a tool that we were using. So with the GeoNetwork catalogs, it allows us to search through the metadata. It provides us one consistent approach. We populate the distributed tag field so that you are not just searching through metadata to get metadata, you're searching through metadata to get data. So you actually access the data through the catalog. And all the web services that we use are the same web services that are used by EMODnet map viewer. So when you come to use the EMODnet and you do things with the map viewer and you download data, we're not using any special secret sauce in the background. We're using exactly the same web services that we publish on the website. So we are also, when we brought the catalog together, we realized that there was, even though people are using Inspire and ISO standards for the metadata, they weren't harmonized across the thematic lots. And that's a major job that we're doing now. There's no particular fault of anybody. It's just the way things were implemented. So we're working on that now to try and harmonize the structure of the metadata across the lots, because one of the things that has happened as a result of us centralizing is that we're now having more and more people using the EMODnet, and they're expecting a consistent approach or a consistent API. So this is what I was just saying now. So if we go back here, this is where, for example, the GEOS portal are now harvesting the EMODnet catalog, and because of that, on the GEOS portal, you can now display EMODnet data products on their map viewer. And we didn't, all they did was harvest our catalog. In this case, we're looking at human activities data sets, and that was reasonably straightforward for them because it was geospatial data. But across the other thematics, you have to change slightly for some of them where you're going to get the data or how you're going to present the data, and we want to try and eliminate that so that if somebody writes code that gets data from EMODnet, they don't have to change it to suit each of the thematics. And just on this metadata harmonization, I know I'm butchering what my colleague Tim has put in the notes, so if you really want to know more about it afterwards, take Tim outside and he'll give you more details. So as I said, we also present everything we do on this as web services on GitHub, and they're the same web services we use. So if you want to create your own EMODnet portal, you can go ahead and use these web services, and you can do another one. So also we have the GEOS portal and the Ocean Info Hub. In this situation now, for the GEOS portal, they're harvesting our catalog service for the web. With Ocean Info Hub, they're DCAT, Tim, is it? DCAT, I think they're doing? No. Schema.org. But in both situations, we were able to leverage tools that were in the current versions of GeoNetwork in order to meet the demands of these catalogs. But it was a great step for us, because one of the things that the Commission had been asking for years is that other services will be able to harvest the catalog of EMODnet, and now they can. So we also had, because we're so focused on web services, we have to have a monitoring dashboard so that when anybody comes to us and says the services are down, we can find out if the services are down, or they can find out if we're having any problems. So I'm just going to finish this little tiny section. This section on this slide. This is an old slide that shows how the EMODnet thematics work together to create data products, and it's a great testament to the success of EMODnet that we work like this, and hopefully with the new changes to the EMODnet portal. Other people can use the new infrastructures to create similar type of products. But I wanted to move on to the human and resource realities of doing centralization. So we talked about the technology we used in the background that helped us create the success that is the centralization. But the reality of the 3 years, or 3 years of centralization, is that we've had 147 meetings. The Central Portal team. I think that's over one. It's over one. I think it's 74 meetings a year. It was something like that. And the Central Portal team is 5 of us plus a member of the European Commission. There's always a member of the European Commission on the Central Portal team. And the reason why the person from the European Commission is on the Central Portal team is to make sure that challenges that come from the Commission side, like challenges like we need to have follow GDPR rules, or colors on the website, or problems with logins, are handled in a way that we don't have to worry about it. So the meetings, the frequency of meetings is now reduced as we move out of centralization. We're centralizing data ingestion now. That's going well. It'll be ready this year. But that frequency of meetings has been replaced by a frequency of JIRA tickets, because we now had to, as part of all this, we had to create a tracking system for all our features development, any bug lists, and then we had to train up all our colleagues in the EMODnet community to use JIRA, and they're now all JIRA masters, and the tickets get created on a regular basis, and we all has to be tracked and reported at the end of the year to the Commission on how progress is going along. So this is the transition from a data sharing network to an operational service of the Commission. And I would say now that EMODnet is not really a data sharing network, it's a data publication service of the Commission, because it has to meet the regular rules of service level agreement rules of the Commission. So just on that as well, just on my final slide, and I apologize for maybe inaccuracies on this one, but I just did a quick back of the hand calculation of how many data servers are now operating in the EMODnet network. So it looks like we have a centralized system, but we don't. We have at least 10 distinct servers across Europe, providing web services and data services and catalog services, which are harvested and brought together at the central EMODnet server. And each one of these is I don't mean to, this is not a criticism, this is just a statement of fact. Each one of these is a potential point of weakness. The speed of the network is rated really by the performance of the slowest server in the network. You have a huge repetition of tasks across the network. So we have in the Central Portal team tasks that we do, say, updating a geo network from one version to another, then has to be replicated across the network by all the other technical teams across the network. And the network is also dependent on the willingness of technical teams to carry out operational maintenance. We had a problem at Christmas where one of the servers in the network went down, and it couldn't be fixed for over a week because that institute that was providing that service was closed for that Christmas week. So these are the realities of moving from a data sharing network to an operational publishing system. And I will just leave it at that, because I was hoping that this will trigger some conversations afterwards, maybe tonight over some beers, because I think we need to start thinking about the future of how we're going to evolve EMODnet. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Conor. So, Neil.
Thank you, Conor. 2 questions. Do you want the difficult one or the slightly less difficult one first?
So long as you don't ask me anything about ontologies.
No. So the first question, which is the less difficult one, just to give you a context. What's your relationship to the European data portal? Is there a plan to push all the metadata into the European data portal?
We do. Tim's the person to talk to about that. We have to get DCAT compliance, which we have. And so we had talked to the European Data Portal about them testing, doing a harvest, but I don't think they ever got back to us on that.
I mean, I'd be curious because I asked for self-interest because we've pushed metadata into there. We're not using the DCAT route, we're using the geo network route. And that's been really problematic for us.
Yeah.
And the whole way that they do their metadata quality scoring is also very difficult. So there's some interesting conversations to be had with the European Data Portal.
Just on that thing, what we're excited about is the Inspire, our group are launching a new geo network catalog. And we want to be able to go into that, being harvested by that, because that's going to make things a lot easier for us too.
Well, you'll see whether that's the case, because we did it from a newer geo network and it wasn't necessarily easy.
Okay.
The difficult question, sorry, Dick. So you mentioned the Commission wanted a common user
Yes.
It's back. So what does the Commission think the common user is?
That's a very interesting question. You can turn around another way and say the Commission funds these products being developed, and these products are owned by the Commission, therefore they're owned by the taxpayer, and they are all covered under Creative Commons by 4.0 open data license. So the Commission wasn't really concerned about who the user is in this situation. They wanted the user to be able to access and download the products. Now, there used to be a time where we took surveys of what users were doing, but that became problematic because it caused problems with GDPR compliance. And also it created a situation where we were having pop-ups occurring on the web page that was detracting from the experience of a user trying to get to data. So we may eventually go back to doing surveys again, and we actually have a permanent online survey on the portal, but the priority was to make it easier for people to access, whatever type of user it is, those data products. So, but it's a good question, it's a very good question.
Any more questions? Somebody with more questions? Neil, you have another one? No, Conor, thank you very much for a nice presentation.